Hey guys, it's David from 3D Make It, and today we're going to talk about what you can do to slice for your 3D printer with a Chromebook or an iPad. Let's go! Just before we get going, I want to say a huge thank you to Held Johnson. Thank you for joining Patreon at the tree support level and supporting the channel. Congratulations, you've got yourself a 3D printer, but you forgot about owning a computer. Well, don't worry, Astroprint is coming to the rescue. With Astroprint, you can slice in the cloud, get your G-code, store it on that SD card, plug it into the printer, and print. Now, Astroprint also has an online slicer which can print to a Raspberry Pi or what they call an Astrobox. If you don't have an Astrobox, you can just download the G-code and print. But to see our setup video on the Astrobox, go ahead and feel free to click up there in the corner and you'll get to that video for setup. So as we all know, there are a bunch of slicers out there and not all of them are built equally. Many of them have some features over the others, but all do a similar job. So what we're going to be doing today is diving into Astroprint. So for Astroprint, you need a few things. A web browser, easy, we can do that. We're going to need an email address so we can sign up for an account. After that, there's just a few quick setup things. So let's jump in and we'll take you through exactly what we need to do to get Astroprint set up and start using it as our slicer. Just before we jump into that, if you are curious about what other slicers happen to be out there that you can use, feel free to check the description. We'll put links to them and some videos that we have describing them. So here we are at the Astroprint webpage. Now we've described a few things about Astroprint before. If you don't have an account, which you might not, we're just starting out, we can click the Start Using Astroprint button at the top or Astroprint down here. And remember, the website is astroprint.com. So let's fire off that big red button in the top right corner and it will take us through to their sign up page. From here we can choose plans. Now you can see that there's some different options at different prices. For us, we're just going to stick with the free usage right now because we're just using it on one or maybe two printers at home or for personal use. If you're going into business and education, they can leverage a bit of a quote for you. But again, we're going to stick with this free model here. So we'll just pick that and we're going to pick Let's Go. So from here, it's asking our name, our email, and a password. So let's say we're going to put in our name, David 3D Make It. We're going to put in our email. And then we also need a password. So pick something that you're going to remember, not necessarily too easy, too hard. You can choose to get mail or not. I always opt out because I stay abridged other ways. So then we click Get Started for free. And here it says welcome. And what we can do now is we could go through the setup process for an Astrobox gateway and do it ourselves, or we can just go I'll decide later, which is what we are going to do. We're not going to use it with a gateway right now, so we're not setting up a Raspberry Pi. We just want to use it online for the slicer. So once we click decide later, we're greeted with our dashboard. Now you can see here that it does say we're allowed two printers, which is fine. We're not using any at the moment. So a lot of this stuff up here, for example, the monitor and the G-code, live viewers and things like that, we're not going to use necessarily right away without an Astrobox. Those features require you have something plugged in to your printer to monitor. And again, we have that video that shows you how to set up a Raspberry Pi. What we need to do is start setting up this Astroprint interface just to be a slicer. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down a little bit to this section that says printing profiles. And basically we're going to start at the left and work our way to the right. We don't need to go to the store, but I will mention that if you do go to the store, this is where you can actually buy a pre-made Astrobox without buying a Raspberry Pi and doing it yourself. If you want to build one, I would suggest looking at our other video because it's cheaper to buy a Raspberry Pi and do it yourself. Now that we're onto our printer profile section, We're just going to start left, go right. So printer profiles is the first thing. So I'm just going to click launch. Now everything takes you to the next window. Now we're going to click new printer profile. So now you have to think about what printer you own. Well, for us and in this demonstration, we're going to say we own Creality printers. So we own an Ender 3, a CR10, something, in that Creality line. We're going to pick Creality 3D, and then we can come down and you can see the options here. So it's important to note the Ender 3 series has many, many printers, starting with the Ender 3, then it went Ender 3 Pro, then there was like Ender 3 original version 2, but now we're on Ender 3 V2, which is the newest one and the one most of us would assemble now. This printer is the same build volume and everything as the Ender 3. So that's why we can just pick Ender 3 here. So just think of it as you're picking the general model of your printer now. So Ender 3, we're going to go add to my printer profiles. Boom, done, easy. Now, just out of curiosity, I'm going to click the edit button just to show you what it did. It built this printer, and basically our printer has a build volume, which is 235 by 235 on the build plate and 250 high on the Z-axis. It does have a heated bed, and then it just gives us some options here. And these are where we want to start with. Really, we're going to use Cura 3.6 inside of the cloud here. 3.6.0 is a relatively modern version of Cura, and it has all the features we need. So it automatically had that set up, but that's just one thing to keep in mind if you're adding a custom printer. You can use modern Cura. And again, our Ender 3, the Creality series, and lots of the newer open source printers coming off, or cloned printers coming off the line, are Marlin. So this is all good. It does give us some start G-code. Now, if you were using an auto bed leveler, this is where you would have to come in and add your G29 after this line here. So if I were to go G29, and then I go like this, and then we'll just call it auto bed leveling. That's going to add the command in to actually trigger the probe to go around and do the probing of the bed. So other than that, this is good start and end G-code. It'll get you going for now. Now, of note, if you don't have a auto bed leveler and you send G29, nothing happens. So just to be future proof, you could add that in now. So I'm going to hit save, and then that's just going to take us back to this screen. So we have an Ender 3, and we can add lots of profiles because let me go back to the main screen. So I'm going to click the waffle in the corner here, and that takes us back to the main screen. You can see here that it says I'm allowed 2 printers, but I'm not using any still. Even though I have a printer profile in there, it's not counting my profiles as printers used. So if you wanted to use this just as a slicer like we're doing, you can add more than 4 or 5 printers. I could add all my printers in here, all 6, and be happy, but right now, Ender 3. So once we're happy with this setting, we're just gonna go back and we're gonna click the waffle. The next thing we're gonna do is our material profile. So the material profile, think the filament. This is what we're printing. So in general, and especially on a stock Ender 3, we're probably going to be printing PLA. So they already have a PLA material for us. If they didn't, you could make your own custom material here and then go through and name it. So you could call it whatever. Let's say it was PETG as a material. And then basically you can tell it the filament density and the diameter. And then you just type in some temperatures. So you type your PETG is good at 245 and 80 at the bed, and it's going to stick and print. So that's kind of the custom material widget. I'm just going to click cancel for now, and we're going to go add material. We're going to use that PLA one. So here's the PLA. We're going to add my material, and you can see I get some options here with the material as well. There's a settings cog with 0 beside it, and then this little button lets you copy it, and then again the edit with the pencil and the paper, and then delete it. So if we hit edit, you can see here now that we have a PLA profile. It's not quite right though, and this is where the custom filament button could be handy. So let's call this PLA, but we're going to change its name to PLA 210, and we're going to change our extruder temperature to 210, and we're going to set our bed temperature to 60. Remember, the Ender has a heated build plate and it is best to use that. So we're going to stick with 60. We're going to hit save, and what that will do is we get our PLA 210. Perfect. So now we can go back again. Remember, you can add as many materials here as you need. So we're clicking the waffle, we're going back, and now we're going to click the ninja. So it looks like you haven't created custom slicers. Click on new to create. It's the only screen that tells you to click new, which is weird, but hey, click new slicer profile. We're going to make this profile 4, and you can see here's our printers that we made before, Ender 3, and here is our filament settings at PLA 210. So for every different PLA or printer, you can make a new slicer profile, which I would suggest. You're only really going to end up with maybe 3 profiles per printer. If you have PLA, another material like PETG or TPU, something flexible, right? And then you'll have for each printer. But let's click add settings, and we can see it'll spin the little widgety. And then here we're going to call this Ender 3 PLA and 210. The reason that I like to do this is it gives the most information about what the default of our profile is. We can come in and edit this, and I'll show you where that is in a second while we're doing it. But we can see that the default quality layer height is 0.1. Now 0.1 is okay, but I'm going to set the default layer to 0.2. The reason for that is just going to give us a good quality print, but not slow us down too much. That's kind of the middle of the road. It gives you quality, but you don't have to worry about taking too long. Now there are extra features. If you open this up, you can see that there's line width, and then there's a bunch of other features in here. But let's just worry about creating these ones first. Your line width should be okay. If you do find under extrusion, though, one trick is to increase your line width, and that will increase the flow rate of the filament, and they say to do it by roughly 10%. So in this case you would do it by 0.04, but we'll leave it at 0.4. Next is the shell, and the shell is how many times the plastic goes around the outside, and this is the same for every slicer. So the more shells, actually the more strength. So a good shell width or thickness is your nozzle diameter, which our case is 0.4. So the Ender 3 has a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, which means if we wanted 3 perimeters, so 3 wall thicknesses, we could tell this that we actually want 0.4 times 3, which is 1.2 instead of 0.8 up here. 0.8 gives us 2, because 2 times 0.4 is, well, 0.8. So we want 3, so we can change that. Now we're going to get 3, and then we can see our top and bottom thickness here. And just note that the top and bottom thickness is a multiplier of your layer height. So we said in our layer height, in our quality, we changed that to 0.2, which means 0.6 is going to give us 3 top and 3 bottom. That's not bad. That's about standard. You could go 4 if you find that the parts are a little too flimsy on the top or under extruding, but 3 usually gives you a good start anyway. Now you can change these top and bottom by themselves too by opening up the menu, and you can say, you know what, 0.3 or 3 layers on the bottom, that's great. 3 is great, but the top does need to be 4, which really I would lean that way. So if you go 0.8, that gives you 4 now total on the top. So you get 3 layers on the bottom, 3 layers on the, or 4 layers on the top, and then you're getting 3 wall perimeter. So this print is actually looking pretty good. It's not too slow, not too fast, just good quality, Infill. Infill is something that you don't need a whole lot of in general. Infill's function is to support the top of your print. Now, there are some cases where that's not true, but an infill pattern is what goes on the inside of your print so that when you're printing top items, it doesn't fall in. Now, infill density, usually I set mine around 10 and I go as low as 0. Depending on what I'm printing. There are some models out there that you don't need any infill. If you want something though that is going to be structurally sound, add shells first and then come to your infill, and you can see there's an infill pattern here called gyroid. Gyroid's one of my favorite patterns because it gives you good strength while not taking much longer than grid. And gyroid gives you strength in both directions, X and Y, and the walls give you that strength up and down. So even though the walls play more of a strength, the shells play more of a role in strength for your prints, gyroid infill is a good help, and I would suggest you switch to gyroid. Not even because it's better, it's a little stronger, but it's so much fun to watch. Now, 10% is fine, and believe it or not, this page is fine. There is such a thing as gradual infill, and that is also on this page. Or you can also do infill support. We don't need to worry about those right now. We're just going to stick with these basic settings, but do know that if you want to save on some infill, you can use the infill support settings to actually minimize where the infill is if it doesn't need to be there. Now, next is material, and a clever person says, hey, we're already using our profile, and we are. It brought our temperatures in from our other profile, so we don't even need to worry about material here. But this is the place we would go if we want to make a quick edit in the slicer settings later. Speed starts at 60, which is a really good starting speed. Once you've tuned your printer, you can go a little bit higher, but I'm going to say leave this section alone. And then the next few sections are okay. Travel is just fine. We don't need to worry about any of these settings. Cooling you want enabled. So just make sure cooling is enabled. Support is something you turn on and off. So it can be off by default in here. And then if you toggle it on, you can see the default behavior of support is everywhere. Which is not ideal, but it might be necessary. Generally speaking, if things are needing support, you try to angle the object in a way where you can either manipulate it to be just support touching build plate, or you're going to use tree support or another support method, and we'll touch on those. And we do have videos actually on support and how to tune this whole section, and the link will be somewhere up here for you as well. The only thing that I'll say is once you click enable, you can scroll down a little bit and you can see there's going to be a support Z distance. Now, if you open this one up, this is the distance between the top layer and the support wall. Now, right now we have 0.1 and that will fuse to our model. So this is an important setting to switch. I set it to 0.22. The math in Cura is actually rounding that up to the nearest whole layer, but 0.22 will make it so that the model doesn't get fused to your support and you cut yourself a bunch trying to get the support off. Once you've got that set, you can come back up and turn it off. So again, just modify that one setting. Build plate adhesion, it's going to print a skirt by default, which is just that little prime line that goes around your model. It's good to have it because your nozzle needs a bit of priming. It needs that filament flowing easily for your skins. Now, we're not going to worry too much about mesh fixes. Just leave these as default. Special modes is another area where you probably won't work a terrible amount in, but there's one thing of note in special modes, and that's spiralized outer contour. And this mode lets you print in vase mode. It's very, very fast. It's a one wall extrusion and it never stops. So usually your 3D printer lays down one layer at a time. This keeps it from doing that. Now, in the experimental settings, this is another area where you may not roam too often, but you do have tree support, which is a really good support method. And again, you can check out how to configure it in our other videos. So now that we've got all of this done, we're just going to hit save. That's it. I know that was a lot of settings, but we're done with that. And now we have Ender 3 PLA 210. So keep in mind, to recap, all we did is we worked from left to right in the printer profile. We made our Ender 3 in printer profiles. Then we went to materials and we made our PLA 210. Then we went into our slicer and that combined our material with our printer to make our slicer profile. And the slicer profile is really where the magic happens. So now that you have your slicer profiles and your printer set up in Astroprint, it's time to print a model. There are a few different ways to get models into Astroprint. So you can browse one of the many repositories, yagi.com, Thingiverse, My Mini Factory, wherever it is you like to grab your models, and then you can either upload them or you can use the actual interface in Astroprint, plug in Thingiverse, and then search inside of Astroprint. So in this example, we're going to download and have downloaded a 3D Benchy from Thingiverse, and we're going to import it into Astroprint. All right, so here we are on Thingiverse. So let's type in 3D Benchy. Probably without the, oh, you found it. Yay, typos worked. Now, 3D Benchy is this guy, the first one here. And then once you're in on your Thingiverse page, you just click Thing Files. And we just want this one, the 3D Benchy. We're not going to split it up or anything, so just download it. And then we can come back to our Astroprint control. Now, everything else you do in Astroprint now that you've set up your printers is actually done in the design library. So what we're going to do is launch the design library. And you can see they've given us an Astroprint key, which is, pretty cute. It's a good thing. Astroprint has some cool little models for us. So on this side here, you can see that we have the option to upload or create a new folder. So if you are working on a large project with multiple pieces, create a folder and put those pieces in there. It's just going to be easier for you to maintain them. Now, if you're just going to be printing a Benchy like we are, we can for sure click Upload File, and then we'll go Downloads, and we'll pick our 3D Benchy and click Open. And then you can see it flashing here as it's uploading. So you have to be a little patient. It takes a second. But once it is uploaded, it will show in the list. And it's going to say analyzing, but as soon as it's done, this little box on the left here turns into a 3D Benchy. So right now it's just parsing the STL file, getting ready for us to use it. But while it is parsing, let's click these three dots and we can just see what kind of options we've got here. So if you were hooked to, say, your 3D printer in an Astrobox, you can print it right from here. So you can use the big print button or the print. We can slice it, which is what we are going to do, but we can also order it if we don't have a printer and we just want to send it off to a print farm, or maybe you want to print it in some material you don't own. So you want it out of ABS. You can order it here. And then we can view the build plate. So we can actually put the Benchy on a build plate, which is kind of cool. Let me see if we can show you what that looks like, just to give you an idea. So here's the build plate, and this is what Benchy looks like on the build plate. So this is just, it's a standard 3D building environment. If you hold the left mouse button down, you're going to be able to spin it around like I am. If you hold the right mouse button down, it shimmies the plate back and forth. So here we can see it. Now we can move, rotate, we can remove meshes, we can save the plate. We can move this guy around. So if we were printing a lot of things, we needed them, to be all over the build plate. And then the other thing we can do on this side here is we can pick our printer. This is going to be an Ender 3. It's the only printer we have. We can add, so you can actually put more things on this build plate. And then once you are ready to, on this build plate, you can hit print. And what the print button will do is it will slice it. Now, we're going to hit print. And it's going to, the design name is Benchy. It's in our design library, so we'll just save. And it will redo Benchy. It's just running the geometries. It's pre-compiling it. It's getting ready to spit out some G-code for us eventually. So here it goes. It goes to this screen. So this screen is the slice screen. So while this is just analyzing, I'm popping back a tab and I'm hitting slice. See, I hit slice, it's the same screen, okay? So you can get to it through the build plate or you can get to it through that. Now you can see here that when I picked print, it actually made a copy of Benchy and made it into Benchy 1. And I can still do all my slicing options here. So I'm just gonna close this duplicate model. let's delete this. And then we're going to work with our original now. Hit slice instead of print, or build plate, my apologies. So slice, and there we go. Now we have some options. The printer is an Ender 3. We will know that we'll be printing PLA. So these are the settings that we set up before. Choose your print quality. Well, we've set up this Ender 210 in our slicer settings before the way we like it. So let's keep that. Now, we don't need support for Benchy. We do want build plate adhesion. That's the little skirt. 10% is fine. It's pulling that from our profile. Now, remember when I said you could come back into your profile and tweak it? Well, let's say that we really like our profile, but 210 at the hot end to melt our material is just a little too much. You can click this advanced slicer settings and it brings back up the settings window. And on the fly, you can change layer height, speeds, the material, so the temperature of the material. And then once you're ready, you just hit slice. So after you've made a change, you can hit slice, or in our case, we don't want to change it. So we'll just hit slice. So here it goes. We're still in our design library now. Okay. We're still in the design library, and we can see here that it's made this 3D Benchy Ender 3 PLA custom, and you can tell it's a slice because this little file says gcode. If you click the 3 dots, you can download this gcode file, and once you've downloaded it, now you can take this file, put it on your SD card, send it to your printer, click, and hit print. So this is how you can basically end up using Astroprint to become your slicer in Chrome and iOS. The only other mention that I want to make is the build plate is available through the front page as well as the design library. So there's 2 ways you can get to the build plate to actually put things on. I like the design library. All my files are in one place. Now you can see in the design library, if I look underneath the Benchy, see it says 1 print files. That's because we sliced it. AstroKey doesn't have any, but just for fun, if we go AstroKey and slice, and we're just going to keep our default settings. So we're going to use our Ender 3. We'll hit slice and it will do its magic. The little sword goes, and now you see that we have a G-code file. So if I were to go back to just the home of the design library, look, there's the print file. So now if I were to pick Benchy or AstroKey, you can see here underneath in either, it's giving me that print file. Now, if you click the 3D Benchy, it opens in a different view. But anyway, you click it, you can get here, and then you can download it. The really cool thing though, is if you wanted to reslice Benchy now for something else, you can keep slicing it forever. So let's say you want to slice Benchy. We're going to use Ender 3 PLA 210. That's fine. But let's say we wanted to change the material and we were going to add another one. Well, we can add stuff right from here now. So let's say we're going to add, and we're going to add a custom material. We're going to call this material PLA 200. And then we're going to make PLA 200 at the extruder and 60 on the bed and create it. And as soon as we do that, we can go back into our design library and use that. It's unfortunate it doesn't pop us back in, but you can at least add it and come back. So now if I were to go on my material, I have 2 choices now. And you can see that since this material doesn't have a slicer profile, I'm just left with the defaults. So we'll just leave it at normal. We'll set it 10% as we were talking before. And then if we hit slice, it will slice and it'll add. So now you'll see that we have one at 210, our original, and one at 200. And you can download all of these and send them to your printer via the SD card and USB card reader. If you click this and click print, if you had an Astroprint printer here, it will send the print job. So let me log into an account where I have a printer set up just to show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so we've gone through, we have a printer set up. Now, we show how to do that in another video, but now that we have a printer here, it'll list it. So you can see that my Ender 3 is here, it's online. I can see, I can confirm the bed is clear. I can do camera controls. And if I click the little camera, it should spin up and show me a picture, which it does, which is really good. I can confirm that the bed is indeed empty. So now if you have this hooked up, instead of slice and download, you can actually print. So if I hit print and we use our 210, we're going to use our Ender 210. We'll do that. It's the Benchy that we know that we want to print. So I'll hit print. Now I'm not going to discard the print file. I want to keep it for later. Maybe I want to download it again. So I'll just hit print now. Add to queue is a premium feature which you have to pay for. So here you can see I have a matching printer, which means I can just hit print, and the next thing that happens is my Ender 3 will start printing. So I'll print that up and I will show the results later, perhaps on Twitter or in our Patreon. So there you have it. You can use Astroprint as your slicer to get that G-code file output, save it to an SD card, whether that's on a Chromebook over the USB adapter that came with your printer, or perhaps you have the iPhone adapter or iPad adapter that lets you plug in the micro SD card into your device. If you don't, setting up that Raspberry Pi is a one-click print and a really good option, but we'll leave a description and a link in the description below for that if you want to give that a try. Did you guys know we have a Patreon? It's true. Check out the description below. There's lots of cool behind the scenes that are coming through the Patreon, as well as the Patreon own live stream is coming up very, very soon. So check it out. If you want to join, great. If you don't, even greater. Just hit that like and subscribe and share this video around. You guys are awesome. Have a good one.